This conference will now be recorded.
And now we're recording, supposedly. And we'll start this. Okay, so this is the webinar series on re-condoing your document management processes and systems. And we'll get right into it. This is week 3. First week was on what is document management and why it's not Google Docs or OneDrive or just a simple file share in your system. 2 was on choosing a scanner, simplified. Actually going through a lot of the details on that. We'll talk about that some more. And week 3 today is designing the solution. So next week we'll cover workflow and the processes of your business. So we were founded in '96, so we've got 25 and a half years of experience in document management and have provided solutions to a wide variety of businesses and look forward to doing more. We are focused on document management. That's the core of our business. But around that, we've put some auxiliary type products and systems in place. One of the first ones was advanced data capture. This is more for the scanning side of the process, but it's also for capturing data, especially in accounts payable or other processes like that, where you need to extract a lot of information off of a piece of paper or a PDF that comes in and process that and get it into your line of business system, your HR system, your accounting system, and so forth, and then put the image into document management. Excuse me. Excuse me. Automated workflow processes, we'll talk some more. Backfile scanning, if you have a room full of file cabinets or boxes that are full of paper, we can come in or take them off site and scan those for you and put them in the system. Electronic forms, taking all your paper forms and making them electronic. And that's not simply creating a PDF of a paper document. It's actually making it an e-form that is fillable electronically and then puts this data into your system or routes the product around the enterprise to get more data. We provide programming and developing services. This is mostly to provide integration between your line of business systems and the document management product that you've selected, SharePoint, and we also provide print management, which is a control and process on your printers. So the first week, we provided why is Google Docs not EDM? And a lot of that had to do with problems with file cabinets, the amount of space they take up, the lack of security, the creation of duplicate documents everywhere. Working with a customer right now that we're scanning a final packet, but the packet we have is like the 3rd copy of the documents. So, there's 2 more copies out there somewhere besides including the original, all taking up file space. So what is EDM? EDM is the process of capturing, storing, and retrieving electronic versions of previously paper-based documents or other media such as PDFs, but also your digital images and media files, managing everything that's not in your database with a database. It's like Spotify for your documents, images, and videos. So we'll talk about that. This was one of my customers. They had 55 file cabinets at the beginning of this process, a customer service department. And at the end of a couple of years, they decided not to use our services, but did a scanning job on them and converted them, and they're all now electronic, and those file cabinets are gone. And the paper inside the file cabinets was destroyed, so it wasn't just relocated. We talked about Spotify. If you've ever used a music app, and a lot of people have today, it's easy to find what you're looking for. You type in the name of the artist. I like Elvis, so I type in Elvis, and everything Elvis shows up for me. Or I can say, show me country music by genre, and a lot of different country music will show up. I can say, find an album. In none of this process have you said, where is that file in Spotify or on your iPhone? You don't go searching for it by the location of that song or that music. But what you're using is metadata. And we're going to talk about that more today. But it makes it easy to find things, quick to find things, because you're finding information based on what it is and not where it is. So again, that's what we were just talking about, what it is and where it is, and that's based on the metadata. So it's easy to search documents. The security is very enhanced. We can provide data validation as documents are stored. The documents and information can enter a workflow process, so things can be approved as they're being processed, and collaboration. This was that same space I showed you in a couple slides earlier, the file cabinets. And now in that same space, they've got 3 offices plus some other work area at the end down there. So it's usable space. They're paying, you pay a lot of money for space. In a file cabinet, typically, whether it's a lateral or vertical like we had, it takes up about 9 square feet by the time you take the space of the actual file cabinet and allow room for the drawers to be pulled out. So yeah, 50 file cabinets, 9 square, let's say 10 square feet. That's 550 square feet dedicated to nothing but file cabinets. That's expensive space. But what EDM is not going to do, we're not going to be replacing your line of business systems such as your accounting application, your HR, other database systems. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of an EDM is to manage the documents, the files, the videos, the music apps, music, pictures, everything that's not in your database already. And we do that very efficiently. What it will do is bring order and process control to all the documents and pictures that you have so that you can find them easily and secure them. It will, in many cases, provide connection between those applications. So we may have that accounting and HR, and you have workflows in all these different applications or workflows that need to be done, and hopefully electronically. The document management system can be the collector of those workflows and provide one login to access and process those different systems. We talked about scanners. You can go from something from this very big scanner here over on the left, the Kodak 5850. That's a $90,000 scanner sitting on your floor. It processes 210 pages per minute. It's a lot of scanner. But it can be something simple like this little desktop scanner that's $280. That's 25 pages a minute, or basically the same size of this 50 page per minute scanner, which is $900. How do you choose? What is the difference between the scanners? It's pretty obvious why you choose or don't choose a big scanner like this, but you have a lot of options here in what we call the small to medium range market. And how do you choose that right scanner? And there's a lot of variables to choose from: speed, feeder capacity, the paper sizes that the scanner handles. One of the ones that most people don't think about is that duty cycle. In a small office, it doesn't mean a lot, but in a larger office, it can mean the choice of one scanner versus another. What kind of output formats is it providing? The volume of paper to be scanned. How fast do you want all that paper scanned? Does everything that comes in a day have to be scanned that day, or can it be delayed because the next day is slower? Number of personnel dedicated to scanning. One of the big problems I see with most people that choose, especially some of the bigger, faster scanners, is they don't dedicate enough people to the process. If you're handling paper, there's so many scanners out there today, like that 2850 or 2050 and so forth, that handle 50 to 60 pages per minute. When I first started, a fast scanner was 30 pages per minute. That was state of the art. But even that, it takes time. The big problem is you buy a fast scanner and it'll process 1,000 pages in just a few minutes, really. So why buy 1,000 page per minute or 60 page per minute scanner that can scan all the paper you have in 30 minutes and then let it sit on your desktop for 7 hours of the day? So one of the things I talk about is not overbuying the scanner so that you aren't spending a lot of money that you don't need to spend. but then making sure you do buy enough scanner to handle your job. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how do you design and implement or go about the process of implementing a document management system. And we have a three-step process that we go called discovery, strategy, and implementation. In discovery, we go through the 5 Qs. In strategy, and that's mostly what we're going to cover today, is the 5 Qs. In strategy, we talk about the automation, elimination, improvement, optimize, and understanding of your process. And then implementation is just that, doing the configuration, the training, and the rollout and buy-in of your new system. Let's go into the 5 Qs here. So designing your solution, how do you start? Well, the first thing, we ask several questions, those questions that we talked about. What documents are to be controlled and stored? That's probably the first most critical piece, is determining what's out there and how you're going to do it. Where is the information located? Where's all those documents found at? We're going to cover each of these in more detail. When and how often does your staff need the information? If it doesn't need it quickly, you may not need to scan it all in one day. Why do they need the information? And I consider this probably the most critical piece of the pie, and we'll talk about that. And then who uses the information? And that really gets into the next phase, which is next week, which is the workflow business process automation. So what documents are to be controlled and stored? The first step in that process, of course, is to gather samples of all the documents and other information to be managed, or at least making a list of all the video, audio, pictures, and so forth that are already digital files, but maybe they aren't. Maybe you have a lot of audio on tape or video on tape that needs to be converted to digital, or you have pictures that are actual physical pictures in a album or in a file someplace. How do we get all that converted and put into the system? One of the next steps is to make sure you sort them by department. Although usually when we go into a company, we're working with one department at a time, because it's that old saying, you can't eat the elephant all at one time, just one bite at a time. And so we work by department. But even there, we've got to sort them out. And there may be reports. There's the actual, let's say in accounting, there's the reports of the accounting system. There's the actual invoices. There's the purchase orders. There's the packing list, bill of ladings. All these are different documents that go through that accounting department. On the other side, on the AR side, is all the invoices that are going out, payments that are coming in, kind of the reverse process. And what this ends up being, these documents and these files, so these are what we call your types of the documents in the system, the document types or classes of documents in the system. The next question is, where is the information located? This determines how we're going to enter that information in the system. So if we have paper file cabinets or paper documents, of course, we're going to have scanning. If it's on a file share, whether it's in Google Drive or OneDrive or out on your own personal file share on a server someplace, we have to determine, are we going to import all those files, actually bring them into the system? They can be dropped and drag and dropped into the system, or are we just simply going to link to it so that they are viewable from within the EDM, but we're going to leave them where they are for the time being? Or are we going to cover newly created documents? How are those going to be handled? Most of the applications, most of the EDM applications out there will interface with your Microsoft Office, Google Docs, and so forth, and basically give you a way to actually directly save those documents created, whether it's in Word or Excel or PowerPoint, directly into the EDM. And you can retrieve documents from those applications. Is it a integration with your line of business system, so that when that invoice to a customer is created, it automatically drops a PDF of that document into a folder someplace, and the EDM imports that document automatically, and it could be in your HR or your regular ERP system. reports. A lot of systems don't have them today, but there used to be, or is still, a process called COLD. That was actually back from the 70s. It stood for Computer Output to Laser Disk. And it started with the IBM because IBM and the mainframes printed lots of paper, lots and lots of paper on green bar, on big paper, no less. And so offices were being overwhelmed with just keeping up with the reports. And they actually created this process before regular document management called Computer Output to Laser Disk. And it gave a way to directly import, instead of printing to a printer, the report was printed to a file, and the software would dynamically read that file and import that report into the system.
Wow.
We can do that today through the systems, and we can also do it, just from regular PDFs. The other question is, we talk about creating new documents. One of the things, items that an EDM can do is templates. So you have a template for an offer letter to an employee. We save that template inside the EDM, and when a new offer letter is to be created, you simply double click on the template, go ahead and put the metadata into the indexing criterion, and we'll show how that's done. And it opens up the documents and takes all that metadata and shoves it into the right place in that Word document. And then when it's ready to go, you save it and close it, and it's automatically stored back into the EDM. So it really speeds up the process and management of new documents and new spreadsheets, new everything inside the system. When and how often does the staff need the information? Again, part of this is going to determine how quickly that information needs to be brought in, be available in the new system, So if it's a critical process, it's daily scanning of new documents. We're not going to wait till the end of the week and process a whole stack of documents, because people need access to that information critically. That's what we do at a lot of the customer service accounts. They're scanning new customers' information into the system. And that information needs to be available to the people that do the installation, to the accounting department to get billing going. All sorts of places need that information right away. Automated imports. Again, if we can, we like to have systems that are your existing line of business systems, dropping files into a directory with some indexed data and automate that import into the system. And it helps to become part of your daily workflows. Some of the information you need to determine how long you're going to keep. A lot of accounting documents become a liability after 7 years. IRS says you only have to keep information for 7 years past the time of your filing. And after that, if they want to audit you, you can say, hey, we don't have that information anymore. It's 7 years. And so it can save you some liability. If you have it, you have to produce it. So just a note of interest there. HR documents, most companies practically keep them forever, but a lot of times it can be, so many years after they leave the company, or so many years after the person has passed away. All of this can be automated in most EDMs as part of a life cycle of the documents. You can set up an expiration date on a class of documents so that every 7 years, a series of documents will be presented for deletion, or you can set it for automatic deletion. Helps keep your system cleaned up. So you just have to we go through and you say, okay, what are the documents? How are we going to handle them? And what is the life cycle of a document? And this one is real simple. I've only got 2 lines here, but why do they need the information? And why is it the most critical question? In the second line there, it says it all, really. I go into so many companies, and as we're going through their documents and We're trying to determine what's needed and where it's going and what's to be done with it. So many times I find documents that they're still filling out or creating and they're not required. Um, and It's just because we've always done it that way. And one of the things I always do at the beginning of especially the workflow design process, is talk about grandma's ham. And it gets to the end of it, and they're asking grandma why she always cuts the end of the ham off when she cooks a ham, because she's taught her daughter and her granddaughter to do it the same way. Uh, and the answer from grandma is, it wouldn't fit in my pan without cutting the ends off. So now they have bigger pans. They don't need to cut the ends off, but they're still doing it because that's the way they were taught. And we try to get rid of that, those extra systems. One place that I worked at, they had a document that they were going through several levels of approval and different things. And they went and examined it, and they said, we really don't need this document. And they calculated that it saved them $100,000 a year from not having to process that one piece of paper. So it's critical that we look at that as we go through your information. It's going to save money and time by really looking at your documents to see if they are necessary. The last question is who? Who uses the information? One is determines where the document will be routed in workflows, which is the process we're going to talk about next week. But if it's not going to someone, it gets back to the last question of why. If it's not going to someone, it's not being, somebody's not being notified that that document is being created and is in the system now. What is the purpose of having it at all? And it's like that, especially with reports. At some point in time, somebody said they needed to have these reports generated. And so they get generated, and a lot of places still printing them and putting them out to a lot of different people. And so many of them, you say, they end up in the trash. So again, if there's nobody using the information, why are we doing it? But if it is, we're going to talk about next week how you automatically now take that process and put it into codify it into your EDM system so that it is tracked. The person's notified they have work to do or something to review, and it tracks when they did that and how long it took them to do it, and puts time frames around it. So come back next week, of course. So all of this is coming back. We talked about the what question, determine the type of documents, and the last four determine the metadata. And so here's that basically the type of document or the type of data that we've collected. It's called an internal listing. And this is the name that we actually create for the document. It's created from the metadata itself, because down here is the client's name, John Doe. Here's the property that we're working with, Cotton Islands Downs. The date of the document is here, the effective date. And so these three pieces of information were gathered automatically as they were entered, and then creates the quote name of the document in the system. But now with this metadata, you can search and find this listing by any of this metadata. You can say, show me all the documents that had an effective date of 5/13 or an effective date through, or show me every listing for this piece of property. And we're going to jump over to that real quick. So here's an example of an actual system. And we're going to click back on the home here real quick. So these are what we call common views, because as I said, this is a database around your documents. And so if I want to see all of my current listings, I can click listings and actually break it down because of the metadata that's assigned to it. Active listings are all listings by state, because we put the address and the state in there. Or listings by agent, because we're putting the agent's name on that metadata. So looking at the same document, we can find, just like in that song or the Spotify, I can find the same song a lot of different ways by looking at the artist, by finding the album, by looking at the genre of songs. You know, it's different ways to look at the same piece of information. And this gives you the same ability. So let's look at active listings. And here's that Cotton Island Downs listing with John Doe. And when I click on it, it's going to bring up that set of metadata. So here's that agent listing, Josie Bartholomew, so we can do that. There's the dates. Because the date was this date, we can have the effective date or active dates. But here, now this is just data. It's not the actual document. But because we wanted to see all of our listings, and listings are essentially data, we can then click here and see all the associated information. Now here's that agent that was assigned, who the client was. Here are the actual documents associated to that listing. So we have the listing agreement, we have a natural hazard disclosure, which has a much simpler set of data. But if you look at it, if I was just finding this disclosure, it's got this little up arrow thing at the end. Well, if I click that, it'll actually take me back straight to the listing where all the data about that listing is. Here it comes. So here's that listing again, and here's all the data about the listing. So even though it looks like it doesn't have much data with it, everything about the listing is associated to that document and everything about the client. Here's that listing agreement. It was a Word document, and it's got that same type of parameter on it. But now I can look at that listing agreement. It takes a second to open up Word. My system is kind of slow, of course. I apologize for this. It doesn't quite take this long usually. There it comes. So this was actually created from a template for a listing agreement. And when it was created, it asked us to fill in that metadata. So we filled in the seller, the agent, we gave it the address, and we told it that in this document, this is where those items go. The listing date, the expiration date was all filled in. So as we created that, we said we wanted to create that. I'm going to click home here for a second. So here's that listing agreement. And if I open this up, okay, that's not my template. Okay, there's the template. So again, I can give it the title and say, I'm sorry, not the title. Select the listing that I want it to go through. So we'll pick a different listing agent. It's already got a lot of data. As we talked about, the listing contains a lot of data. So it's asking me if I want to pre-fill who that client is. I'm going to say yes. So it pre-filled that part of it. And then I'm going to create it. It's opening up a different version of Word on here for me. Okay, so here's that listing agreement now. And as you see, it put the seller in that I selected, the Christopher Brady, and that address for it, and put in the expiration dates. This had an expiration of the same date. But anyway, it pre-filled all that information in there for us. And now we just put in the other data that we need in it. And once we select close on that document, we're going to save it back in with the changes. So it's actually creating a new document, and I want to check it in. Yes. So it was checked out. It's going to check it back in here in a second. So now it's checked in, and here's that document created automatically for us. And you can do that with spreadsheets, whatever that you're creating, any kind of document or forms. And just to show you, I need to do it that way. And on the system we crashed, and I said yes to the wrong question. So it's adding the add-ins, and you see right there it added the M-files add-in this time. And so if we just open up any document, I'm not going to do anything really, but if we look at the M-files, we're going to do a save the M-files here, and we'll save it to our HR vault. And I just pick a class. This is the document type that we talked about. And I'll just say general, some kind of self-service document, keywords, test, and hit create. And so now that document is saved into that vault. I can also open, I can explore the M-files, I can check in changes, compare. But if I had a field on here, I could take and insert a property on that document. And I can look at any of the properties and create a field for it. So I created a document, and then I can say OK, and put Ron Casto domain as the person that was created by in that document. What happens in a field is if I insert properties, it just remains a blank. And as I create that metadata, it'll create that document. So I'm not going to save that. Check it back in. We have the listings. So that's how these were created simply. Just to hope, for this system itself. Again, this is your browse. This is common views that we create for our users. These are recently accessed. So I may get a phone call from a customer and they want to have information about this property here. I can pull it up, look at the data, and then I can see any of the information, again, associated with that data, the title companies, lenders, so forth, that are working it. But then I'm done with that phone call, and I may need to go back to my Lacey Point listing and look at it. And so I don't have to go back and search for my documents again. Now, down here at the bottom, and I'm going to show you this in a moment, but this is the workflow. When I create these listings, they enter a workflow called New Listing Workflow, and it has steps in here. Listing is on the market, no transition. So I can, create a workflow, and they can have as many steps and as many processes. I can put time frames around that. It all manages your document. We'll talk more about that next week. So let's go back to our presentation. So that was the metadata. You can have, this one's basically replacing a spreadsheet, was just what this metadata was doing. So we had a lot of data on here, but on an actual document, because we had the metadata that was associated with it, we don't have to have very much on the document itself. And as we showed, as that document is created, it can be assigned a workflow based on entering the system, and whatever that workflow is determined needs to be done next. So in summation, it's critical to get to the basics. We get all your information together, clean out all the irrelevant documents, the ones that aren't really useful for us anymore. And then we start the layout of your system, because we've gathered the different document types. We go through and determine what metadata that we need to associate with it, the dates, the people using the document, the creators of the documents, and then possibly start a workflow. So just to follow up, in doing this, we captured those questions. And I have customers, and I mean, with over 100 employees, and they save over $400,000 a year just from using these types of systems. It's a very simple, very low estimate, because this is based on just a 10% productivity increase in your knowledge workers. Typically, with a system like this, you will achieve a 20 to 40% increase with just document management, and with workflow, a 20 to 60 to 70% productivity increase. It just depends on the job that's being done, but it pays for itself very quickly. Typically, my customers have a return on investment over 6 months or less. So our core values are customer satisfaction above all, a commitment to the highest quality that we can provide you. We work real hard to provide you a continuous improvement of processes in your business. We do it with a can-do attitude and with proven solutions. We only deal with the top products in each of the market spaces, whether it's scanning or document management or workflow. And we want to provide concise communication on what's being done and how it's being done with you. You got any questions there, Mike, or anybody?
Hey, you know what, Ron? What I'd like to do is I'd like to schedule an appointment and have you come down and take a look at how we're